At a very macro level, China has one massive problem, which is one of population. It's hard to get an accurate count, but it is an aggressively aging population, which was the result of the one child policy for a very long time. China has sort of been on their heels trying to adapt that policy. But really, the last data I saw, I tweeted this out. It was a little while ago, Nick, so it may be hard for you to find in my Twitter feed. But it was a projection of China's population, which essentially showed it contracting by almost 50% by 2100. So that's a really bad situation. Now, when you have a slowing population, then the economy has to morph. Why is that? When you have a young population, so for example, take what China was 20 years ago when it entered the WTO, or what India is today, when you have lots of young people, you can on-ramp them into economically productive activities like manufacturing. The problem when those folks accumulate middle-class income and wealth is that they age out of those kinds of jobs like they did in America. And what we seek are services and service-level jobs. And you spend more money, you spend it in a different way. So as populations age, your economy has to turn over unless you have a large bulwark of young people that is constantly growing to take up more of the slack, the economic slack, to pay for these folks who have different lifestyles, more savings, and different needs, specifically healthcare. That's China's enormously big problem. So when you see them talking about 6% GDP targets and you think, how does a country that big even grow at 6%? It's because they're reverse engineering for what they need to create economic vibrancy in that country. And so when you start to look at 2%, which in America you'd say 2% is great. We would like high-fiving each other for 2%. That's not a sustainable level of growth for what's happening inside that country. It does not create enough of expansion economically to cover all these folks. That is a really big issue. So as that happens, I think what we need to do is figure out how to be competitive. Now, this goes all the way back to our first conversation. Subsidies don't make us more competitive. Things that governments can do to make us more competitive are long-term, drawn-out tax incentives that change the earnings capacity of companies. Why? Because in the capital markets reward those businesses. Jason, you just mentioned it. Why is the Chinese capital markets in difficulty? Nobody knows what the long-term earnings are. How do you forecast it? It's not simple anymore. It's not a model. It's not an interest rate. It's not a discounted set of cash flows, right? And so that's how they need to refactor themselves. They need to have a much larger population. If you don't have that, you have to figure out how to do it with immigration. If you don't have that, what China has done is they've tried to go to Southeast Asia and to Africa, and they've tried to create that synthetic form of a growing pyramid, right? Now that can work as long as the balance sheet of the country supports that, because ultimately you're still talking about moving money offshore, okay? So I think they're in a little bit of they're in a pretty difficult spot.